Hello and welcome to my review of the latest knife to join my collection of case knives. This is the Copperlock. In doing my research before doing this video, I found an old post on bladeforums.com. Dates way back to March in the year 2000, and it was a response to a question, and the post was by Shirley Bosa, I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly, who at that time was the WR case historian. Perhaps she still is. And the question was related to the history of this particular knife pattern. Her answer, I won't read it necessarily verbatim, but I'll cover most of it because I think it's quite interesting. She says here that when they started working on the design of the Copperlock, the sales manager requested their designer to design a single-bladed locking trapper style knife. He'd requested the handles be made of old red coloured bone with Roger's jig. Tom liked the flat blades, that's the designer, and he also liked the long nail mark, which you can see on this knife, and hence that's how they got there. Also, the blade features a cut swedge, and apparently the sales manager and designer both talked about the lock mechanism and where it be located. The first sample was a success, and the sales manager was very wrapped in it. Had some more samples made, passed around to get feedback, and one of the feedback that he got was that the tang of the knife, it was sticking up above the bolster about 3/8 of an inch. So in order to make that look a bit cleaner, they fitted the bolster, which you can see on the right of screen there, up near the tang of the blade, and it's the copperhead bolster. And I think that gives the knife a really beautiful, smooth, flowing look, because as you can see there, much like the canoes, which we'll look at shortly, there's no sharp edge there on the tang. It just flies up, and then of course with your clip point blade, that just flies down into there, and all up a really great looking and practical design. The patent number of this knife, which is 549, was given to the Copperlock by Shirley herself, as the knife was basically a combination of the 54 and 59 patents, and ended up, of course, being called the Copperlock. A very, very beautiful knife indeed, and it's been on my list to get for a little while. And I pulled the trigger on this particular one, which is a 2012 manufacture, and it came out with the beautiful hunter green handles that you can see there, and a brass inlaid case shield. I'm always a sucker for green, it's pretty much my favourite colour, and the brass against the green is just stunning. I really like that very, very much. So what we'll do, we're going to pull the knife up shortly and have a bit of a close look at it. But one of the things that was discussed in that that thing from Shirley, or that article, was it was based on a trapper design but with a locking mechanism. I do happen to have a slimline tracker, which is another single blade knife, so this is an ancestor of the locking blade that we see there. And if we pull them up close to the camera where we can have a bit of a look at them, you can probably see the similarities. Obviously the locking blade's quite a bit beefier and wider, although lengthwise very much the same, and of course you can see the family resemblance there. This model of course is a slip joint, so it is not a locking blade, and we'll just open the other one up and you can see there the difference between those two knives. So this is obviously a knife that's going to be suited for more heavy duty use. So I'll put that off to one side. As mentioned, one of the things I really liked about this was the brass shield against the green. I think it looks fantastic. You've got the brass pins as well, and of course, like most case knives, the brass liners. It just all ties together very beautifully. The hunter green handles there with the peach seed jigging, you can see the colour, as often does, fades out towards the edges there. And it's a beautiful combination of greens and turquoise blues and all kinds of patterns. The rear of the knife's a little bit darker, and of course just the standard jig in there. I mentioned the shield. Case shields themselves are an interesting topic, and that's an interesting shape, that one. I've got some other knives here just to show you with some varieties of the case shields. First we'll have a look at a canoe, one of my several canoes. This is a recent one I got actually. It's an olive green handle colour, and unusually it's got strike line pinch bolster, so you'll see the difference when we show you another cue in a moment. And that's a very, very nice knife. But you can see it's got the oval shield. Again, different size shield there, and you'll be able to see the difference in those bolsters I was discussing. You can see why they call them pinched bolsters. It looks like someone's put it up like that, pinched down those ends. I know we're not supposed to do in a canoe review, but you know what it's like. So there's another shield design. We've got another version of the shield there, which is really nice. And yet another variation on the theme on there. So as well as collecting different patterns and colours and things, if you're interested in case knives, you can also put together a collection of the various shield designs, which I actually find quite interesting. So I'll move on to having a look at the knife. There is another version of this knife. This is the full-size Copperlock. There's also a mini Copperlock that's available. It's 3 5/8 of an inch closed length and weighs in at 2 ounces. This particular model is the full size. So let's talk statistics on the full-size Copperlock model we have here. The length of this knife closed is 4 1/4 of an inch, or 108 millimeters. The open length is 7 3/8 of an inch, or 188 millimeters. The weight on this one is 2.8 ounces. So it's a little bit heavier, longer of course than the mini one, as you'd expect, but it's certainly not a heavy or overly weighty knife. You certainly wouldn't notice it too much in your pocket. It's a two-hand opening knife, of course, being a traditional folder. It does have an extended nail nick in there. However, happily for left-handers like me, there's a lot of exposed blade, so I can quite easily open it quite naturally with my right hand on that blade. I really like that very much. The blade itself is a very attractive design. It's a clip point, and it's got, as you can see there, ground swedge on it. Sorry about all the fingerprints. The one thing with the Case knives is they do show fingerprints. I'll try and avoid that as we go along. Yeah, clip blade. It's a 3 1/4 inch blade, which in the metric system is 81 millimeters. Now that's measured from the end of the bolster here all the way through to the tip. So obviously the cutting edge is going to be shorter by probably in the region of about 10 millimeters or so. I didn't actually measure that. It's a very solid lock-up knife, no blade movement up or down, side to side, and if we listen for the click here, you can hear very authoritative, solid click. It lets you know it's locked up. I don't think there'd be any dramas with that whatsoever. If it were to let go, in your hands there, it will come down the tang of the blade and shouldn't be much of a risk of cutting yourself. One of the great things, of course, about locking knives as opposed to standard slip joints is it does give you that little bit of added security. And I think for that reason, the Copperlocks are a very good option if you like your traditional folding type knives, but you want that security of having a locking blade. These are really good. The blade on this particular one is Case's True Sharp, I believe they call it, stainless steel. There is, I think, also a chrome vanadium version available if you don't want the stainless. Very, very attractive knife, and I think a very useful knife. It could be just as easily at home in your pocket as an EDC blade as it could be as a collectible. It's a classy knife. It's, as mentioned, traditional style knife, so it's not a threatening looking thing, but it's a great, great blade. I really like it very much. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye for now.